How much are you paying for creative work? Is it too much or is it too little? What is a fair price for your next brand campaign? I think this is a tough question, right? So in this video, I will break down the value of creative work and give you clear guidelines for how you can calculate how much your business should invest in creative and design work. So by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to calculate how much you should invest and what your expected return on investment should be on each creative project. So really get ready to boost your ROI or return on investment using value-based pricing. And before we start, for the best business and marketing advice, make sure you subscribe to my channel. It's always really important. And hit the bell to get notified when I post a new video. They usually fall on a Thursday. So here's the thing. One of the major exercises I've been doing over the last couple of years has been hired in to help businesses like Unilever and Arla Foods calculate their benchmark for how much it should cost them to produce campaigns and campaign assets in-house, so meaning creative work. And both organizations have different models for how they get to their final outcome. One of the organizations, they do everything themselves in-house with their own in-house team. And the other organization, they've actually hired an external studio, which are then operating on the inside of their walls of the business. But both organizations, they originally needed to figure out how much a standard asset should cost them, which is, I think, is a really interesting exercise, right? So how do you standardize creative work? It is a big question. And can you put a value to it? Because we all know that creative work is something that sometimes give kind of a slightly return on investment. But here is the thing. If you are operating in-house, you own your resources and they are charged out hourly. So the value these different companies get is dictated by the skills and the value, the resource, the employee, so the resource, meaning the employee, they can bring to the table every day when they walk in the door. So what happens when you are not at that capacity yet? You might be a small business and you still want to, or medium business, sorry, but you still want to buy your creative work, so your assets, your design work, your campaigns and your copy, etc. out in town. So this is when I think value-based pricing really needs to be put into play. So we will dive into this in just a second. But first, I wanted to start out with a story I think is really fun. So back in 1970, a guy named John Pasha, he was a designer, and he drew this logo, probably prettier than what I can do. So it will look somehow something like this, but hopefully you can see where I am getting at. Right, so he drew this logo, and it is of course the Rolling Stones logo, and everyone knows this one. So what do you think the value of the Rolling Stones is today? Not just the logo, but just the value. About, roughly speaking, what the internet says is $900 million. That is the value of the Rolling Stones. Imagine the value of this logo. But what did they pay for it? Guess. They paid 50 quid. That's it. So John Pasha, he was a design student, right? So when we look at pricing creativity and creative work, we firstly need to look at the business size. Why do we do this? Well, because the business size will indicate how much risk you are willing to take. So risk will be incurred when you are creating, for instance, a new logo. So let's have a look at this. Let's get our little mouth going. There we go. And we will then say we have a small little business. Could be 1 to 10 people. You define that. And then we have a medium-sized business. See, this is why I'm not a designer. And then you have a big business. This is meant to be a factory. Let's do this. Right, so because when you're looking at this, it indicates how much risk you are willing to take. So the first question you will have to figure out is which category do you fall into. So the value of, for example, the logo for a small business is far less than the value for one of these guys over here, because the investment of rolling it out across company assets is far less, but also there will be way less people in your audience that you are impacting. So over here, it's not just your email footer that needs to change, it's everything printed, everything that are going out the house. So perception value plus physical change on boxes and everything as well it will be a great risk, right? So I think we get that. So this is why these companies over here, they will usually take a safer bet and go with an award-winning agency that know what they're doing, or at least they would be knowing what they're doing most of the time. So the first thing in the value-based strategy for you as a business is to decide on your company size versus the level of risk that you feel that you are willing to take when, for instance, doing a new logo, a new website, etc. So how safe do you need to go? So as a business owner, you're probably used to thinking about value in the terms of time spent. So value equals time, and then time equals money or your budget. But as the Rolling Stones example just illustrated, creative value, it can't just be based on time, because 50 quid versus a total value, and I know it's not just the logo, but the impact of the logo being changed on a $900 million business, well, there's some sort of like this disconnect in that. So I sometimes argue with clients and they will say, well, yes, you've given me this quote for this campaign, but I can't get it much cheaper if I go to these guys over here, and also they will deliver it much quicker. And my question back to you would be, okay, but are they going to give you the same value, the same return on investment when you look on your revenue streams? So that's really the big question here. So maybe they are, and maybe not. You may argue, but again, if you go back to the Rolling Stones example, you could say that they're much more than their logo, and that is true. But if you look at Nike and Apple and the risk incurred if they change their logo, it would be huge, it would be crazy, right? So you need a logo delivered to bring value to your business that are exceeding the price of what you pay for the work in the first place. But you want to obviously eliminate any risk. You want to make sure that your campaign or your logo, your website, it comes out successful, right? So you need to hire someone who knows what they are doing. It is key. So you have to decide, are you a medium company? Good. Let's say that is what we are today. So we then need to, if we go with these guys, we then need to shift the mindset from 1 hour is equal X value output. So how should you then think about it? Sorry, having a top of the lid here. You need to start thinking about it from a value angle. So that leads me to the second question I want you to consider. So in the second question, you need to look at your income streams. So let's just, for the sake of it, say that you have 3 income streams. So you will have 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, So what is the revenue of each of these income streams respectively? So say company X has the 1, 2, 3, then the gross margin, the split between these, because they might not bring in an equal amount of money each. Say you have 30% in, that's called gross margin, in gross margin on 1, and then 2 is bringing in 40%, is nice and even numbers for the ease, and then number 3 will be 30% as well. So that's kind of the first part. But then you can say, okay, so value stream 1 might caveat for 30%, then how much profit are there within this? Because that will not be the same either. So say that they have profit. I hope you can read this. Let's say they have a profit of 25%. Let's just say for the example, if you do retail, there'll be less profit compared to if you do e-commerce, because then you're selling directly. That makes sense. So making this one easy, let's say we have a profit of a good 40%. We like this one. And that leaves 35, do the math, 35% over here. So I hope you get the gist of this split, and it is just to make it easy. Right, so the next thing we now need to do is that we take the work stream you would like to increase. So let's decide that the work stream we would like to increase, because the project we're doing might not impact everything. We just want to impact 2. So you want to increase the 40% that caveats here, the gross margin. The profit of that needs to be increased with 3% over the year. So a 3% increase could be quite substantial, but it's potentially also possible, right? So 3%, right? Then you need to ask yourself what this means in terms of revenue. Would a 3% increase of your profit here equal something like 10 million? Again, let's keep it easy. And I don't care about your value. We're going to do dollars for the fun of it. So let's say you are increasing your profit margin with 3%, so that equals 10 million per year. Then that's a good campaign. That's a lot of money, right? So next question is, how much as a business are you willing to invest to get this 3% increase on your revenue? Well, to get 10 million in revenue per year, and that's 3%, I personally think that an increase, like an investment of 10%, is not unfair. And 10% of 10 million, well, that would be an upfront investment of 1 million, right? So if you're investing 1 million and you are at a risk level where you feel that, okay, that's manageable, you fall more over here because you're having a safer bet, then you're starting to have something that looks really reasonable. Can we agree on that? So this is it. Creative work should at all times be value driven. So an asset for your business. See, treat it as any other asset. It's not just a campaign in and out the door. This is an asset. This is something you're constantly building on. So you need to ask the creative, if you're asking the creatives to work faster, like a bunch of brainless chickens, it's not necessarily delivering long-term value, and it gives the ball back in your court a little bit, as well as client side say, okay, I actually need to plan ahead so we can get the best possible outcome in time. So if you're just having people working faster and hoping for the best, then you end up putting yourself and your business at an unnecessary risk. So this, my friend, is why good creative work costs money. But then how long does it take to get to a good output? 2 weeks? 3 months? Who knows? But let's just try and be realistic here. Well, if there's £1 million investment behind it, or $1 million, then it will obviously take longer. I also sometimes see clients, they will split it into different smaller projects and say, okay, we have $1 million for the year. That's fine. But even these small projects, how do they work together, and how will they collectively have an impact here? Because might not be one campaign or one website, it might be a whole range of little things that will overall try and achieve this goal. So try and take a step back and look at it holistically. So in just a second, I want to talk about what it means to choose the right partners to work with you and your budget to achieve this goal. But first, make sure you comment below and tell me, do you think you're currently underspending on your creative and design budget? Is that just a yes or no? Super simple. So now you know how much you are looking to increase your gross margin and what that figure looks like in terms of revenue, profit, and percentage increase. And you've even thought about what business areas that make sense to focus on. So we are focusing on B, and said you have like a mid-level risk as well. So now it is time to find a partner who can deliver on your goals to increase those numbers. So when I evaluate partners, which is something I have to do all the time when I'm producing projects for my clients. So even if I'm within a big A-list company like this one over here, or I'm working with a big A-list agency, there are some steps I would go through, and it doesn't matter if you are small and almost individual and running your own business, or you are Apple. There'll be some things that you need to check. So first thing first, analyze the job required. So let's say you are building a website. Now, who has done something similar to this before? So you know your business, the look and feel, and you probably have some clear brand guidelines and the tone of voice. So all of that all together, you will look at and you'll be like, right, so what direction are we trying to go here? What are we trying to achieve? So that's the first step. Then second up is finding partners and looking at them and saying, okay, these ones seems to have done something that are in the area of what I would like to have for my business. Well, what have they done before? What other projects that visually or tonally or storytelling wise have they done that are slightly in style of what you would like your project to look like? So that's a really good way of looking at it. And then what are their credentials? That brings me to the third point. So do you know someone who's worked with these people before? Or can they maybe send you a reference or someone you can speak to that has worked with them? So in this fourth step, step number 4, I want you to ask, what are their internal process? So this is slightly different, and I don't think this is super obvious to anyone, but having worked on the inside of many of the big brand marketing agencies, this is super important, especially if you approach a bigger agency and say, it's often these guys over here that has the budget to work with a big agency. So ask them, how do they resource their projects? So will you as a business get people who actually produce the work that you assessed and liked in the first place? Because sometimes there's a high turnover of people within these agencies. Or do you just get the ones that the resource manager says that these happens to be available and they have capacity, and now I'm establishing a team around it? Because what sometimes happens is that you're not ending up getting the right creative. So you get creative people, but they're not necessarily the right fit. And then all the work which we did in the 3 first steps, that will just be made redundant. So what's the point if you're not getting those people? So make sure you figure their process. And this is going to make a huge difference for the value of your final output. So insist on this. So in the 5th and last point, I want you to consider price. Yes, price. But what kind of conversation you will have when it comes to price is what is important here. Many of the agencies, including the Brand Catalyst, we will have a client service lead helping you out and just kind of making sure you're cared for and you're heard and we're covering your needs. But there are 2 watch outs. So firstly, Are they capable of having a value-driven pricing conversation? Do the value conversation look at your interest, and does it outline this journey? Does it take into account where you are and where you want to go? Or are you just talking about, oh, we need a Christmas campaign and it's coming up and we need to do X, Y, Z and we have this budget, bish, bash, bosh, out the door and here's some creatives, because that's not right. So second one, do they actually know what it takes to deliver creative products? Sometimes, and I'm not picking on all client service leads because there's some brilliant ones out there, but some of the client service leads are more sales people than they're production people. So they only talk money, but they can't actually talk about the value of the creative work. So therefore, I would insist that you meet and speak to the team behind the scenes. So that is really important. I hope this is helpful. So I'd say now you know exactly how to evaluate how much you should spend on creative work by making your decisions based on quantitative pricing strategy or value-driven pricing strategy. So make sure you don't underspend, and of course do not overspend either. I think a good balance in this is what matters. If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe to my channel. It is super appreciated and what keeps me going. And also check out my free 1-hour webinar on how to develop a purpose-driven brand strategy. I've left a link in the description below. Also, if you want to join a community for like-minded business people where I share my experiences and tips to improve your marketing strategy, go and join my closed Facebook group in the link below. Right, and I think right around now a couple of videos should pop up around me. Make sure you check them out and start thinking like a professional marketer. We don't like guesswork, and I will see you in the next one.